Hi, everybody. Today's Monday, November 17, 2025, and our dear friend Paul Craig Roberts is here with us. Welcome back, Paul.
Thank you, Nima. Thank you.
Please subscribe and hit like button, helping us reaching more people. And Paul, let me start with what's going on with Donald Trump himself and the way that he's attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. Here is what he tweeted. He literally calls her a traitor and is a disgrace to our great Republican Party. And even he came out with some sort of nicknames for her. And Paul, here is what Marjorie Taylor Greene said about Donald Trump on CNN.
Trump when virtually no one else did. Campaigned all over the country, spent millions of my own dollars helping him get elected. And I think that's incredibly important. And I do support him and his administration. And I support them in delivering the campaign promises we made to the American people. His remarks, of course, have been hurtful. However, I have something in my heart that I think is incredibly important for our country, and that is to end the toxic fighting in politics. And this has been going on for years, and it has divided our country, split up friends and families, neighbors, and it's not solving our problems. The most hurtful thing he said, which is absolutely untrue, is he called me a traitor, and that is so extremely wrong. And those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger.
What do you think happened? What do you think is the reason for this?
Unfortunately, it has all come down to the Epstein files, and that is shocking. And, you know, I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children who are in terrible sex abuse situations. And I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that. I believe the country deserves transparency in these files. And I don't believe that rich, powerful people should be protected if they have done anything wrong. And so I'm standing with the women, and I will continue to do my small part to get the files released.
The other part of the interview, which wasn't in this section, in this clip, she was talking about the Israeli ties with the Epstein file. She said that maybe we have to investigate, assess what's going on with the foreign countries coming, other countries coming and influencing our domestic policies. And with the case of Epstein, she was talking about Israel. What is going on, to your understanding, Paul, with Donald Trump himself? These people are not the enemy of Donald Trump in any way, when you look at it.
Uh, the only way I could explain it, based on information that's out there, is that Netanyahu is pulling the strings on Trump, and Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene have both been critics of Israel. And this is inconvenient for Netanyahu. And so he's having Trump disown them, discredit them. Trump has called for both of them to be defeated in their reelection attempts, and has called them both names. This is quite a silly performance by the president, because these were his two strongest supporters in the Congress. So to me, I just take it as confirmation that Netanyahu has extreme influence over Trump, just as he does over the Congress, over media, over entertainment, over education. I mean, what else explains? Netanyahu starts a genocide and comes to speak to the House and Senate in joint session, and they give him 50-something standing ovations. So that's my explanation. I'm glad that, as you reported, that Marjorie Green raised the question of the Israel connection. What's happening? Israel is turning the Epstein files away from themselves into a sex trafficking operation. And as long as it's a sex trafficking operation, then it's about Epstein making money, selling underage sex partners to pedophiles. And that's where Israel would like the story to stay. In my opinion, this story is different. It was Epstein running a blackmail operation for Mossad and focusing on high-placed Americans in positions to be able to influence American foreign policy. And that is what I think is being covered up. And I think that's one of the reasons Trump was hesitant to let the files out, because it might raise the question: was this a blackmail operation? And certainly Netanyahu doesn't want that to become an acceptable explanation. So it's all mixed up with Israel and Israel's power and control. And Israel demonstrates this continually. They continually demonstrate. And I think it's a mistake for Trump to let Israel make a fool of himself, which they've done. We have a ceasefire in Gaza, really, a ceasefire. Another 1,500 buildings destroyed, more people murdered, and it's a ceasefire. And Trump keeps talking about it as a ceasefire, and he's brought peace. Well, it's nonsense, and it really shows that he's subservient. He's subservient to Netanyahu. It's shameful for an American who sees that.
There is something so strange going on with the Trump administration, Paul, when it comes to two guys who tried to assassinate Donald Trump during the election. And we have learned nothing about these people. We know nothing about what has happened, what was the motive, who was behind these people. And as comes to the Charlie Kirk case, and why is that happening within the Trump administration? We know that the meeting they're having, those important meeting. It seems that Tulsi Gabbard was somehow is not considered to be in those meetings because she's somehow outsider to the meeting they have. What is going on within the administration? How these people who tried to assassinate Donald Trump, literally, they wanted to assassinate him. No, he's not putting out anything about these people to his base, to the people who voted for him, who wanted some sort of change in Washington, to know about what's going on with. If it was the Biden administration, and we all criticize it, it's not the Biden administration anymore. It's the Trump administration, and these people tried to assassinate him, not anyone else.
Well, obviously, it's a cover-up. Both the attempts on Trump and the assassination of Charlie Kirk, they're covered up. And for some reason, the FBI is instructed to go along with the cover-up. Why? Well, I don't know. You can speculate. The first attempt on Trump in Pennsylvania, there are problems with that story, lots of problems. And it does look like it was an organized assassination, not an attempt by a kid. And For example, the authorities saw him ready to fire at Trump and did nothing until after he'd fired. And the trajectory of the bullet, this is a mystery. It's coming from up high, allegedly, shooting down lower, but it hits somebody in the stands way up above Trump. So there's so many puzzling things about that, and no explanation, none. And then, of course, the second assassination, it makes little sense. I don't know much about that, but I don't think anybody does. And now the Kirk thing, I mean, that's so full of inconsistencies, the official story. And there are now so many explanations of it, all called conspiracy theories. And so, what is the reason? The Kirk assassination is really the strangest of all because the police took no action to protect the crime scene. Um, the body is carried off privately. This is never supposed to happen, and there's no explanation given. I don't think people know what's become of the body. As far as I can tell, we don't have any autopsy report. Is that right?
Yes,
We
that's
don't
right.
know whether Kirk is buried or cremated or and we still don't know if there was a bullet or not. Um, the whole explanation is so obviously false. And so the question is, why? Why is it false? So I think that does strongly support that it was an Israeli operation. It could also be an operation of the American elite because Charlie Kirk was a rising star. He had the youth, the coming generation with him. He could have been a presidential candidate, and they don't want candidates they don't control. He turned out to have an independent mind. He freed himself from all the indoctrination about Israel and became a critic. And so he was regarded as dangerous. They didn't want Trump either because they didn't control him and did their best to destroy him, not just assassination, but we had all the political assassination attempts, the Russia Gate, the Documents Gate, the Insurrection Gate, it was endless. Um, so I suspect that there's some agenda that the government thinks that people can't handle if they tell them. It's kind of like the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. I'm convinced that there was no one on the Warren Commission that believed the official story they had to put out. But they knew they had to do it because they couldn't possibly tell the American people in the middle of the Cold War that their own government had just assassinated their president. They couldn't possibly say that. So they had to concoct a totally non-factual, unbelievable account. And I think that that's what we're seeing now. Whoever was behind the attempted assassination of Trump in Pennsylvania, it's something that authorities think the American people can't handle, or Israel thinks they can't handle, and and the same for Kirk. And so we don't get an explanation. There's not an explanation. And of course, events roll on, and the public then gets interested in the next event, or whatever that is. And so the fact that it's unanswered just goes out of people's consciousness. It disappears. And I think that's what authorities rely on.
Paul, do you think that Donald Trump understands the threat that he's causing within the MAGA movement? Because what he's doing is somehow destroying everything that was built during his election, and the people who supported him, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, all these people. And it seems that by attacking these people, does he care about the future of MAGA? The people who are not happy, let's put it, the people who are not happy with the status quo in the United States, considering even the Republican Party.
Yes, that's a very pertinent question. It almost looks like Trump is becoming a bit deranged because by attacking his strongest and most vocal kind of supporters, he's isolating himself if the establishment moves against him again, or the Democrats move against him again. The people who are capable of putting up a defense of him, he's isolated himself from them. And so that tells me he's not able to think clearly. It's almost like he's a little bit deranged. Um, when you isolate yourself from the people who are willing to stand up for you, then you're very vulnerable to an attack. And we don't know, how the midterm elections will turn out. We've had the example of this Mandani in New York winning. We don't know what's going to happen. The Republican margins in the House and Senate are small, and the Republicans themselves are not strong supporters of Trump. The ones they call rhinos, Republican in name only, people like Mitch McConnell, for example, they were totally opposed to Trump. Mitch McConnell was all for the insurrection charge against Trump and his supporters. And that was the Republican leader in the Senate. So I think your question is one that should be in the public debate, and we should be trying to find some answer to it. I don't have the answer.
Yeah. And at the same time, he's so much closer to Lindsey Graham, who was every time he was, he saw just the color is changing, the tone is changing. He was somehow, changing his mind in the same direction to go to, Democrats, then those people within the Republican Party that were attacking Donald Trump, he was with them. Right now, he's the closest ally of Donald Trump. That's so strange. That's so strange.
Yeah, it's strange. Lindsey Graham is the warmonger, and Trump claims he's the peace president. So why is he so heavily allied with Lindsey Graham? It's nonsensical. I don't know what the explanation is, except that I think Trump is caught within the power of Israel and the Israel lobby. And for Israel, war is a means of expanding Israel. We see Israel expanding in Syria. We see them expanding in Lebanon. Trump pretends that everything's going to be better in Gaza because it's going to be a resort. His position on Gaza changes. For a while, he was saying that Gaza belonged to the United States, and the United States was going to redo it. And then it sounds like, well, it's actually Israel. It's part of Israel. That's where Israel. So he goes back and forth, back and forth. I think he's not really in control. And I think the amount of pressures that can be put on him by Israeli interests are just overwhelming.
And you don't see that much of JD Vance, influence in the whole situation. Somehow JD Vance is there, but he's in the background. He's not that much influential. And Donald Trump doesn't want him to be that much influential. I don't know if you saw the video he was talking about how Chinese behave when Xi Jinping was there, and he said to JD Vance, "You saw what the vice president of China said. I was asking him something, he didn't answer me. He was just like silent." And you have to learn from him because every time someone asks me something, you jump in and answer the question. He doesn't let JD Vance to help him, Paul, in my opinion. I don't know, somehow they manage the relationship between Donald Trump and JD Vance. They're controlling everything, these people.
Well, originally the argument was that Trump picked Vance as a successor because he had the right attitude, the right values, the right motivation, and had a big change in life. He'd gone from the left side to the right side. But that hasn't lasted, as you pointed out. And so maybe, again, the establishment just doesn't want somebody like Vance for the very reasons that he was originally picked. And so Trump has moved off of it. I've always said over the many years that people don't understand the constraints on presidents. They're not powerful because there's so many different powerful interest groups that can pressure them to serve their agendas. And so every time the president turns around, there's another interest group putting pressure on him to do this, to do that, do that. They have a hard time, even if they have an agenda and a policy and aren't just trying to survive. They have a hard time exercising authority. And when if they go to war, it's usually because they're pushed into it. It's really not their choice. It's the military security complex or the CIA or the Pentagon, or it's something. It's someone else's ambition, their agenda. And people don't really understand that. You see, the minute you let money determine elections, the people have lost control of the government. And therefore, their representatives have lost control of the government. The control then belongs to those who provide the campaign funds, the people who come up with the money to put congressmen, senators, and presidents in office. That's where the power is. And so when you look for explanations, you have to look to where the power is, and it's in these organized interest groups. And of course, the Israeli lobby is probably the most powerful. I mean, maybe it's rivaled by the military security complex. I don't know. It's a powerful lobby, the military security complex. But Israel may have its inroads there too. I can remember reading years ago former CIA officers complaining that Israel has penetrated the agency, that Israel spies on the U.S., and nothing was ever done about it. So we can't know because everyone thinks, oh, the elections control things. They don't. And the people don't control things. Interest groups control things. And the Israeli interest group is a very powerful one. It has such a huge base. There's so many institutions in the United States it dominates. And it's anyone who's not independent who goes up against them gets destroyed. They get fired. They get their tenure revoked if they're in a university. Students can't even protest genocide. They get kicked out of school. If they're foreign students, they get expelled. If you're in many states, including Texas, Florida, you're a businessman, you want to submit a government contract, or you're somebody who wants a job in the government, and you've criticized liberal, you can't have it. So I think the reality of their power needs to be understood, and it's not. And to the extent it is, the Christian Zionists say, "Oh well, it's God's will for us to defend Israel," and they let it go at that. And all of this constrains Trump.
Actually, he was asked about the Epstein's girlfriend, if he's going to pardon her. Here is what he said, Paul.
The case was totally over.
Mr. President, have you ruled out a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
I haven't even thought about it. I mean, I haven't thought about it for months. Maybe I haven't thought about it at all. You're just asking me a
Why can't
question.
you rule it
But I
out?
don't talk about that. I don't rule it in or out. I don't even think about it.
On Epstein, sir.
Yeah. He says that he doesn't rule out the possibility of pardoning Maxwell, the Epstein's girlfriend. And if he does that, Paul, I think that would the repercussions of that would hugely influence his administration. Don't you think that would be the case?
Well, if the Israelis want her pardoned, it simply means she's more important to them than Trump. And so if the Israelis pressure him to pardon her, and Trump suffers, then Israel doesn't care. It depends on who they most value, or who could most hurt them. And so I don't know what the effect would be. I've never really understood the case against her. It's by association. She's damned by association, which is what they're trying to do with Epstein files. The Democrats want to damn Trump because the files mention him, and Trump wants to damn a whole bunch of Democrats because the files mention them. So you're damned by your association, whether there's any real evidence of anything or not. And the assumption is that this was all sex trafficking. But if Epstein is on the financial make, or if people think he's really rich and is a source of campaign funds, a source of investment funds, or an important person, if you hang around with him, you'll meet other important people. There are all kinds of reasons for people to be associated with Epstein and have nothing to do with sex trafficking. I'm not saying there was no underage sex involved, but the assumption that everything is a sexual item, when there are many other reasons people would want to be around a billionaire or somebody worth $600 or $700 million. There's power in money, and people like to have access to people with that kind of money. So what did Maxwell do other than her association? And I've often thought that given the impact of feminism on female sexual liberation, given the fact that there are mothers now who have 12-year-old daughters on birth control pills, the notion that a 17-year-old woman is on Epstein's island other than at her own wishes. It's just hard to believe. I mean, was this girl kidnapped and carried off? The photographs, when she's standing there with the Prince of England, she's smiling, looks happy. And so it makes you wonder really uh, what was really the situation. And I think, given the high profile of so many of the guests um, to the island, it's a Mossad blackmail operation, and that the women there were there voluntarily. Uh, if you just look at the porn sites that young women have today, it's amazing. It's extraordinary. And my generation couldn't possibly have imagined any women being like that. And so, if they're as loose as the feminists help them become, the whole notion that a 17-year-old girl is abused somehow and that she's not part of this voluntarily, uh, that's a difficult concept. It could be true, but it's just been assumed. And of course, later in life, they see this is where to make money, to get money. You can you can present yourself as a victim and you can be sued. And so the whole thing gets so colored. It's so colored with so many different shades of everything that it can not come clear. It's a blackmail operation. And hardly any people raise that question. And the MAGA Americans, they see it all as the pedophiles. These people are pedophiles, and they want to get the pedophiles. But it may really be it's Mossad. And because the American foreign policy in the Middle East, it really merges completely with Israel's. We spent the 21st century destroying countries for Israel, and we called it a war on terror. Well, there was what terror? Libya was a wonderfully governed place. Uh, Saddam Hussein, he, you know, the neoconservatives are trying to present him as an ally of bin Laden. Well, of course, he was on bin Laden's hit list because he was a secular Arab. Well, he had to be because he was governing a country that had Shiites in it, and he had the two different uh, bodies of Arabs who don't get along. Well, if he's one, then the other side's going to be totally against him. If he's the other, then the same thing. So he had to be secular, and this didn't go down with fundamentalist Islamists. So, and the same with Assad. He's an eye doctor from England. Had no intention of being ruler of Syria. His father goes, his brother gets killed, and that's why his brother was killed. So there has to be somebody to hold Syria together. It's got the same problems, different kinds of Muslims. And well, anyhow, we destroyed the Middle East basically, and we did it for Israel. And now they're in Syria, and now they're in Lebanon, and with Trump, they'll be wherever they want to be. And these are the real questions. You just can't get to them because of all the coloring and the, the pedophile sex trafficking aspect of the Epstein story protects um, it, any discovery of it being a Mossad blackmail operation. A lot of the MAGA people would rather see it as the corrupt Americans, the pedophiles. They prefer that than to say, hey, Israel was running a blackmail operation enticing well-placed Americans in compromised situations that they could then exercise control over them for Israel's purposes. That's not as pleasing an explanation to most MAGA Americans as it's a sex trafficking operation and these innocent children are being abused. So it's set up for Israel to, if it was a blackmail operation, for Israel to be protected from that charge. People don't want to see it as a blackmail. They want to see it as a sex trafficking operation.
The point you're making, Paul, I think is so important because these people want to diminish the influence that Epstein had on the politicians. Because here is the newly released Epstein emails from July 2018 shows that Epstein reacted to Imran Khan's election in Pakistan, and he said that he's talking about Imran Khan. Epstein says Imran Khan is much greater threat to peace than Erdogan. Khamenei is the leader of Iran, Xi and Putin. And he calls him a bad news. This is not the guy that, just thinking about trafficking. He's too much involved because when you're in the United States, you're considering the case of Pakistan. You are so much involved in the foreign policy. You know what you're talking about. He's not some little guy doesn't know about. I think the point you're making is make total sense to me. And he was influencing the foreign policy of the United States. I don't know about the domestic policy and what was that, but he was much more than what we're hearing from the news about him. He was much more influential than what the news, the mainstream media, trying to picture him for us.
Yes, and of course they got rid of him. They got rid of him, and you see, Pakistan had nuclear weapons, and although it's not Arab, it's Muslim. And so for Israel, Pakistan has always been a threat, a possible threat. And I think that's why recently an Israeli minister, I can't remember if it was Netanyahu or just one of the ministers, he said that Pakistan is now part of Greater Israel. So they're targeted, just like Iraq was targeted, Syria was targeted, Libya was targeted, just like Lebanon was targeted, just like Palestine was targeted. And so clearly for Epstein to be pronouncing against a democratically elected Pakistani leader who we get removed. We didn't want him either because we didn't control him. This fits the picture. So Pakistan is on the outs with us. See, we like the military government because we can control it. We didn't like a real government. And as long as we're controlling it, it's probably not worrisome to Israel. But if it gets out of our control, then it's a problem for the Israelis if they want to dominate the Middle East and eliminate the Muslims. The problem is Pakistan's got nukes, just like Israel. And this is the reason I think Saudi Arabia was trying to make an alliance with Pakistan to get under that nuclear umbrella, because the Israeli government declared that Greater Israel now included half of Saudi Arabia. So they're faced with an expansionist Israeli state. That's what Greater Israel is. And when the prime ministers of Israel, as they've all done, hold up the map of Greater Israel, it's a huge expanse. It goes from the Nile to the Euphrates, and now they've added half of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. So there's nothing left of the Muslim world. It's all occupied, with the exception of Iran. And they're still lobbying us to attack Iran. So when people don't even see Israel as an expansionist state, but think it's about to be exterminated by all these Arab terrorists, there's not any Arab terrorists left. And what few there were our creation. We now have one as the nominal president of Syria. And we've recently hosted him in the White House. And Putin has hosted him. So we now have, what was this guy? He was an Al-Qaeda leader, wasn't he? The Syrian president now. He was on our terror list. And now he's a welcome guest at the White House. And he's made a pact with Israel. So it looks to me like we've taken Syria, we stuck in our guy. He's pretending to be independent, but he's following the orders that Syria has opened to Israel. So none of this is explored in foreign policy discussions. If they're aware of it, they avoid it. And I'm not sure they're even aware of it. So we live in a world where truth is sort of already fashioned for what we're to believe before an account is released. And so everyone who wonders about the account is branded a conspiracy theorist or a kook or a traitor, like Martin Street Taylor Greene. She's now a traitor. There'll be huge sums of money will pour into defeating her at re-election. There'll be huge sums of money pouring in to defeat Thomas Massey, and maybe also Rand Paul. So, as I said earlier, Trump, in eliminating the people who would defend him, he's put himself at risk.
Paul, last week we learned from Rubio, he said that the sanctions are not working against Russia. Here is what he said.
Not the sanction from our part. I mean, we hit their major oil companies, which is what everybody's been asking for. Obviously, those have to be implemented, and it'll take some time to begin to feel it. But, you know, I mean, I don't know what more there is to do. I mean, we're running out of, there are things that the Europeans can do on shadow fleets, and so a lot of these are happening in areas much closer to them.
Yeah, here is what we've learned from Donald Trump himself yesterday, talking about the sanctions and intensifying the sanctions on Russia, both Russia and Iran.
I hear they're doing that, and that's okay with me. They're passing legislation, or the Republicans are putting in legislation that very tough. It's sanctioning, et cetera, on any country doing business with Russia. They may add Iran to that, as you know. I suggested it. So any country that does business with Russia will be very severely sanctioned. We may add Iran to the formula, yeah.
You know, it's amazing to me, Paul, that the United States has been sanctioning Iran for 44 years. And Russia, in the last 4 years, they have sanctioned tremendously. I don't know what is the outcome of that, and what is the calculation behind, if there is some sort of assessment, because so far, as Rubio pointed out, they're not working. So why are they doing this if they're not working? Why are not what they're not finding another path, another direction to solve the problem? Maybe communicating with these countries, maybe finding a better solution. But Donald Trump is somehow has you don't see Donald Trump going against these sanctions. He's somehow, I'm okay with that. Let's go in that direction, which we know it's Lindsey Graham's and all these people. Their agenda is that, and Donald Trump is getting along with them.
Yes, well, there's many aspects to the answer to your question. First, why are we sanctioning them? Why? Because we are determined that they do something that we want to impose on them to do. That is, we are denying them the uh, ability to govern themselves, that they got to do something that we want. So, what is it we want Russia and Iran to do? What do we want Russia to do? Well, apparently, right now, it's to have a ceasefire, which doesn't solve the problem. What was it to begin with? Oh, well, it's because Putin challenged us at the Munich security meeting in 2007 when he said that he no longer accepted American unipolarism. No more unipolar worlds, no more American hegemony. So he challenged us, so we have to get him. And so the reason for the sanctions changes in time. And now it's he won't give a ceasefire. So and why the sanctions on Iran? Well, it goes back, I think, to when the Iranians overthrew the Shah, the American puppet, and took control of their government. And I suppose they're oil companies, they're oil wells. And so that's the original reason, I think, we sanction them. And what is it now? Well, Israel wants them sanctioned. So we start with that. Now, you say the sanctions don't work. Well, they may not work in terms that they are explained, that economic disruption or stuff like that, hardships for consumers that they won't put up with, and they'll become alienated from their own government, and easier for us to destabilize. And these are the kinds of arguments that are made now for sanctions. But sanctions work in a different sense. They create the impression of wrongdoing on the part of Russia and Iran. It's a way of positioning them, of being guilty of something that's not identified. What are they guilty of? Nobody really knows, but they're sanctioned, so they've done something bad. So it's a way of putting the black hat on their heads, and Washington keeps the white hat on its head. So sanctions work in that sense. It's a way of sort of putting them on defensive. They're sanctioned, so they must be bad or wrong or doing something wrong, and so they work in that sense. And the mystery to me is that even though I agree with you, the sanctions aren't working the way that they say in terms of economic hardships. Putin keeps saying that they do. He keeps saying, well, these sanctions hurt us, but we can overcome it. And what in the world? Why does he say that? Why does he just laugh and say, well, the sanctions don't work, well, they're wasting their time? Instead, he reinforces the sanctions by saying, oh, they're hurting us. Well, how many times has Putin said that? He says it every time he opens his mouth. The sanctions are hurting us, but we're going to overcome them. Well, none of it really makes any sense. And now we reach the point with the last clip you just showed Trump, that we're going to sanction the whole world if they have any business with Russia. Well, I just read this morning that India is still the second largest purchaser of Russian oil. So what are we going to do to India? Trump went over to China recently, found out we can't do anything to China. They can do all kinds of things to us. Well, what sense does this make? Tell everybody you can't do any business with Russia. Well, we need grain, we need food, we need oil. What do you mean we can't? I mean, it's so nonsensical. And why does the United States think this is a policy? This is an effort at coercion. So we see clearly that the doctrine of hegemony is still in place. Anybody who doesn't do what we say, we're going to punish them in some way, or we think we are. And that's what the sanctions are. So we told India, you can't buy oil from Russia, and they buy it anyhow, so we're going to punish them. Well, we've got no business telling any country who they can buy oil from. I've never understood, given the weak position of the United States, why the Russians and Chinese haven't turned this against us. So we're sanctioning you. You can't have any rare earths. I mean, there are all sorts of things, but I guess they're so used to being accused and on the defensive, they don't know how to get off of it.
Thank you so much, Paul, for being with us today. It was a great pleasure to talk with you today, and see you next week.
Okay, I look forward to it. Thank you, Nima.
See you. Bye-bye.
Send me the URL.
I'm going to send it right away.
Okay.